Hello, this is Father Louis Scurti with Friends of the Word, the weekday word, with my guest, Msgr Joseph Ciampaglia. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you once again.
Joe has been with us several times, and the ministry that he's involved with is very, very significant. It is Catholic Relief Services, and each time Monsignor has been here, we've spoken about different aspects of what Catholic Relief Services globally is all about. Today we're going to talk about food and hunger relief through Catholic Relief Services. Joe has chosen the section of the Gospel to read, and Jesus' multiplication of food for the hungry.
This is from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "I feel sorry for these people, because they have been with me for 3 days now and have nothing to eat. I don't want to send them away without feeding them, for they might faint along the way." The disciples asked him, "Well, where will we find food enough in this desert to feed this crowd?" "How much bread do you have?" Jesus asked. 7 loaves, they answered, and a few small fish. So Jesus ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, gave thanks to God, broke them and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and had enough. Then the disciples took up 7 baskets full of pieces left over. The number of men who ate was 4,000, not counting women and children. The Gospel.
Beautiful. Okay, how does Catholic Relief Services multiply food today?
Well, in many amazing ways. I think one of the best ways for me to explain that to you is by way of example, because the examples live. We had the opportunity years back to go to Madagascar, an island off the coast of Africa. And we went out to this rather remote village to see a food production program sponsored by CRS together with the local people. I have never seen so much dryness and dust in my entire life. As we walked along this road, literally clouds of red dust and just rose from the ground and covered everything. Or if you had hair, your ears, your nose, your clothes, everything. Within this dusty, almost non-vegetative state, we found this beautiful ravine filled with crops growing. One woman was watering these crops with a watering can, getting it from a little source and going up and down the rows of lettuce and carrots and all the things that had been planted there. This happened because CRS met with a group of local people who were farmers but had such terrible conditions to cope with that they were very non-productive. They needed a water source, they needed technology, they needed good seeds, they needed to know how to enrich the soil. And CRS told them how to do all these things, and the people themselves, of course, did it. Once the crops were raised, they used some to feed their own families, but the rest they took to market. Rather than going individually to market, we formed a cooperative. The cooperative took the vegetables to the market and could demand a greater price because they were dealing with a larger amount, and they were doing it together so merchants could not play one against the other.
Right.
The money that was raised then by the bearing of these crops is brought back to the village. The people decide what they want to do with it. Let's build a school. Let's build a clinic. Whatever they thought was the need of their own community.
Right.
So you can see it's involving people on a lot of different levels. It's teaching them how to raise crops. They're feeding their own families. They're bringing change to their own communities. That'll be lasting change.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Interesting. And what is the local group who's coordinating all that? Okay, Catholic Relief Services is funding
Mm-hmm.
but who do they speak to locally?
Yeah, we just don't go into an area and decide, okay, we're going to help you do this.
Yeah, that's horrible.
They usually work with the local Catholic agency.
Okay.
It's like it's called Caritas in many
Right,
instances.
Caritas
It's the
International.
Catholic charities of that particular country.
Right.
And we work with the local officials because they already have the network of contacts with the people. So we feed into that, and we then enable the local Catholic charities to enhance its capacity to serve.
Fascinating.
And again, once we move on, they're there.
Right, right. And it's that old story about don't give a man a fish, give him a fishing rod, teach him how to fish, you know.
Exactly.
That is fascinating. And to know that this is Catholic ministry
Absolutely.
it's so fascinating. And the community, even though you're working with the Catholic Caritas International there, they're not necessarily serving just Catholics.
No, not at all. It's whoever has need and who wants to help and wants to help themselves. It's fascinating. Another little aspect of this is the programs called microfinance, whereby by giving a small loan to an individual, perhaps a lady like this,
Right.
we help her and her family. I remember in Guatemala meeting a woman who stood up at this meeting to thank CRS and said, I thank you so much because you gave me a loan of $100, and with that, I went out and I bought this little ice cream box, and my children and I sell ice cream on the streets, and now I'm able to support myself and my children.
Fantastic.
Women are the best workers when it comes to this kind of thing, absolutely the best, and they're very firm about paying back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you suppose that? I think this is a very important aspect of
because
feminist theology.
women feel a primary responsibility to their children. And anything that's going to care for their children and help their children and better their lives, they're all in. And they just give of themselves very generously, and they pay back.
Right. Are there ever any conflicts from the local government with CRS or Catholic?
There's none that immediately come to mind. CRS is well respected around the world, and they know that when we come in, we don't have any political agenda. You know, we're there primarily for their people.
Yes.
And anything that helps the people and doesn't threaten the government, they're usually supportive of.
Now, you mentioned that CRS is in 100 countries throughout the world.
Right.
What's the origin of Catholic Relief Services?
Oh, good question. Catholic Relief Services started at the end of World War II, when there was this flood of refugees in Europe. And the bishops of Europe called upon the bishops of the United States and said, we need help with all of these refugees. And that's how it started. It was called the War Relief Agency.
Wow.
And that's how it started 70 years ago.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it spread throughout the world as a result.
Yes, yes. It grew and grew as different countries called upon us, and as we saw our mission to reach out to those in need, it just grew and grew.
Besides financial donations, and that's always important, how can our viewers get involved or learn more about CRS?
Well, one of the things, once you contribute and go on the mailing list, you know you're going to be heard from again.
Yes,
you know?
I'm one of those.
And this is one of our publications that's sent out to those who are contributing members. So the Wooden Bell, it's called. And it features, each month that it comes out, it features stories of what CRS is doing in different parts of the world. So it's really an educational piece that broadens the scope of understanding.
Let me use a little bit of skepticism. These pictures are beautiful. They're planned. To the average person who picks up this pamphlet, how can they understand the credibility of the ministry and not just a nice show of pretty pictures? How can they really get into the heart of it?
Well, I think CRS really stands on its own record and its own reputation. Let me give you an example. During the tsunami, when President Bush was in office, he called CRS and invited us to the White House to discuss with him and those working with him how our country might respond to that. So, I mean, I think that gives a tremendous credibility
Absolutely.
to the agency.
Joe, wonderful being here for the last few visits, and I really appreciate it. Maybe you'll come back again with another aspect of stories about CRS throughout the world.
Oh, I look forward to it. And I want to thank you for the great work you're doing in evangelization.
We try.
Yeah.
It's our ministry. That's what we have to do. As retired priests,
We're still working.
Siamo pensionati. We're retiring, but we're never retired from the Word of God. This has been Father Louis Scurti and Msgr Joseph Ciampaglia on behalf of CRS, Catholic Relief Services, and I'd like to hear from you, Father Lou Scurti at hotmail.com. God bless you.